He didn't scream. He didn't radio for backup. He just walked upstairs slowly and sat down on the porch. Then he threw up. Detective Marcus Hale had worked 27 years in homicide. He'd seen shootings, burned corpses, domestic massacres. But what he found in that basement wasn't loud. It wasn't bloody. It was quiet, deliberate, cold, and it left him speechless. This is the story of Danielle Mercer, the man who never really left her house, and the basement that revealed a nightmare so calculated it didn't need violence to destroy someone. Danielle Mercer, 32, had what most would call a calm life. She worked remote for an accounting firm, lived alone with her dog, Scout, didn't party, didn't post much. She kept a routine: gym at 7, grocery Saturday morning, fast time with her sister every Sunday night. That's what made it noticeable. On a Wednesday, Danielle didn't log into work.no message.no out of office. Nothing. Her sister tried calling. Neighbors noticed her porch light was still on midday. Her dog barked, but nobody answered. On day 3, someone finally called the police. A wellness check was logged. The officers knocked. No response. Her car was in the driveway, mail on the floor behind the door. They entered the house. Everything upstairs was still. Phone charging, clothes folded, dishes in the sink. Then they saw the door to the basement, locked from the outside. It took one crowbar to crack it open, but what was behind it? That's what cracked Hale. The stairs were lined with newspaper, fresh, untorn, page taped down, as if someone had been protecting the steps from mess. The light was still on a harsh, industrial bulb, wired directly to the ceiling, and on the floor, bleach. The smell hit first sharp, acidic, sterile. Then the rest came into focus. A metal chair bolted to the floor, 2 buckets in the corner, dozens of photographs taped to the walls. All of Danielle sleeping. They weren't candid snapshots. Each photo was labeled with handwritten notes. Cycle 2312 AM. Minor twitching. Cycle 5 REM disruption. Sound test failed. They weren't memories. They were research. One photo showed Danielle on the couch, mouth slightly open. Another, her in the bathtub, eyes closed. Another, in bed, under covers. The camera angle matched her bedroom's ceiling fan. She didn't take these. She didn't even know they existed. One folder pinned to the wall read, "Obedience through stillness." This wasn't a stalker. This was a scientist. A predator building. A case study. One sleep cycle at a time. Detectives searched the rest of the basement. Hidden behind a false panel, they found a dusty hard drive. Inside were screen captures from Danielle's webcam going back 8 months. She never installed surveillance. He had been in the house. Files revealed motion tracking software, keyloggers, and infrared camera feeds from her vents. One video was only 14 seconds long. 2:51 AM. Danielle is asleep. The glow of the laptop lights her face. Then a shadow moves. A figure appears behind the curtain, shoulder, neck, no face. Then gone. She never knew he was there, and she wasn't the first. The house had been rented for years before Danielle. It belonged to a man named Elliot Rourke, who'd lived there for 3 years before moving out suddenly. He was quiet, worked in IT, always paid on time. The landlord said the basement had been locked ever since. They never questioned it. But when police dug into Rourke's background, nothing came up. No LinkedIn, no tax records. No Elliot Rourke. They traced a shipping label from a bleach container found in the basement. It was delivered under a different name to an apartment just 30 minutes away. They raided it. Inside, they found hair samples labeled by date, 5 more hard drives, and a folder. Subjects: active and inactive. Danielle's photo was under active. 2 other women were listed as retired. None had ever reported a crime. None knew they were being watched. They arrested the man, real name, Micah Drexler. When asked why he never assaulted Danielle, he said, "I didn't need to. I just needed her in place." In court, prosecutors called it the closest thing to murder without death, an emotional crucifixion. Danielle moved states, changed her name. She no longer uses beds, sleeps on the floor, wrapped in her dog's leash. "All lights stay on." She gave one statement: "I wish it had been a break-in. I wish it had been quick." Drexler was convicted of felony stalking, unlawful surveillance, breaking and entering, and psychological terrorism, but none of it captured the real damage. Danielle Mercer made it out of that house. She lived. But survival? That's not the same as peace. Because what Micah Drexler did to her, what he built in that basement, it didn't end when she ran. It followed her into sleep, into silence, into places she didn't think fear could reach. And now, investigators have unsealed what was left behind. There were more files, more women, more proof that Drexler wasn't stalking. He was studying. The breakthrough came from hard drive number 3 decrypted after months of digital forensics. Inside, a folder labeled Ren, over 300 hours of footage, time-stamped, cataloged, named. Ren was Kelsey Morgan, a 28-year-old graduate student in Portland. She'd never heard of Drexler, but she had sublet an apartment, the same one Drexler once rented under an alias. She remembers strange things. Waking up to find her window slightly open, her closet light on, the feeling of being watched, but never proof until police showed her the footage. Danielle was watched in her sleep. Kelsey? She was tested. Notes beside each video included: heart rate appears elevated, external influence needed, sleep posture consistent, pattern stable, session clean. She'd never seen him, but he was there for months. Another folder labeled Retired, 7 women, each with the tag inactive, compromised, or abandoned. One entry stands out: subject woke, audio breach, relocation required. The woman was Emma Dorsey, 35, lived in Milwaukee, filed a noise complaint in 2019 about someone in the walls. No follow-up, no charges. She was in Drexler's logs. His note beside her name read: too sensitive, too loud, failed trial. He didn't stop watching her because he feared being caught. He stopped because she broke his protocol. In 2017, a university security guard flagged Drexler for loitering outside women's dorms. He was asked to leave. That's all. 2 years earlier, a co-worker at a data entry job reported that he tracked women's break times and restroom habits. Again, nothing stuck. Nothing was filed. Because what he was doing didn't look criminal. It looked weird, obsessive, but quiet. He never touched anyone, never threatened, never screamed. He just waited. And the system? It only acts when blood hits the floor. Danielle Mercer moved to a new state, changed her name, doesn't appear online. She gave a single written statement: "I can't explain what he did to me. I can only tell you that I never felt alone, and now I hate being alone." She sleeps on the floor, keeps her dog leashed at night, not for safety, for grounding. Kelsey Morgan? She dropped out of her PAHDAADDDHEHE program, moved home, sees a trauma therapist twice a week. Emma Dorsey refused to speak on record, but when officers showed her the footage, she broke down, not because of what Drexler did, because of how close he got. When asked why he recorded his victims, Drexler simply said, "Because they're different when they sleep. They're real and still, and not trying to escape." To him, sleep wasn't privacy, it was opportunity. He never wanted sex, never wanted pain. He wanted obedience, stillness, control. He didn't need to lay hands to ruin you. He just needed time and silence. Danielle Mercer thought it was over. The footage, the trial, the silence. But months later, inside a crawlspace at the home where Micah Drexler was raised, investigators found something they weren't supposed to. One final hard drive. It wasn't filled with victims. It was filled with plans. Surveillance wasn't his endgame. It was only the start. Folder 1. Serafimo, 9. No video. Only audio files. Hundreds of them, labeled by night and tone. At first, it seemed like white noise, but when analysts ran spectral analysis, they found patterns. High-frequency phrases layered under rainfall loops, reversed sentences buried inside static, a female voice whispering, "Stay still, you're safe, obedience feels good." The audio was timed in 90-minute increments matching REM sleep cycles. One line from Drexler's embedded metadata read, "She now sleeps through the sound of her own name. Resistance is fading. Authorities still haven't identified who she is." Inside the same drive, a document titled, "Stillness Protocol Personal Trial Design," it detailed room temperature targets light spectrum settings to induce docility, floor plan schematics for basements, attics, and crawl space, ideal voice tones for command embedding, sedative combinations, melatonin plus microdoses of zolpidem. This wasn't science fiction. It was a manual. Drexler wasn't just watching. He was preparing for a phase he hadn't reached yet. One line, bolded. Goal. Condition stillness. Wake cycles eliminated. Host becomes passive environment. The attic in Drexler's childhood home was where the drive was hidden, but what investigators found with it changed everything. A notebook, water damaged, pages still legible, entries dated back to when Drexler was 12. Dad yells, "Mom, quiet." At night, she hums, "I recorded." She breathes different after 3 a.m. Her real voice comes out. When people sleep, they become better. One page was labeled, "First session, Mom." Unrecorded. Another, "Silence is the cure. Sleep is the answer. Movement is failure." The basement didn't start in his adult years. It started upstairs. As a child, in his own home, with multiple victims and interstate files. The FBI escalated Drexler's case. Digital forensics traced anonymized routers, multiple aliases, offshore data storage. But what chilled agents most? A hidden folder titled, "Map Tracking Progressions," inside. A basic map of the Midwest. Red dots, some faded, 3 marked, active, 2 labeled, testing complete, and 1 unmarked. They corresponded to Danielle Mercer, Kelsey Morgan, Emma Dorsey. 3 unnamed subjects in unknown location, still unresolved. Each had been placed near properties Drexler once lived in. Another document. Phase 2 containment options, it explored. Reinforced soundproofing, finvision deprivation, effects, digital light control, passive camera feeds linked to sleep triggers. Section was redacted, recovered later. It read, testing passive compliance under prolonged containment. Willingness not required. Consistency is. Each subject is a system. Enough systems equals stability. Drexler wasn't building a hideout. He was building a prototype environment, and if he hadn't been caught, the basement would have become a lab. Before the trial, before the basement, before the hard drives, Micah Drexler was known as something else, a man of order, of logic, of faith, and the people who gave him access to vulnerable women. They didn't wear ski masks, they wore suits, robes, and crosses. This isn't just a story about a stalker. This is the story of how a church network protected him in silence, in shadow, and in full view. Between 2014 and 2021, Drexler volunteered for a church-run counseling program called Reest Path Ministries. It was part of a nationwide evangelical network, informal, but deeply connected through newsletters, conferences, and small group outreach. Reest Path wasn't licensed therapy. It was spiritual restoration for trauma and temptation. He wasn't paid, but he was trusted. Former members confirmed he led overnight youth retreats, monitored purity contracts for young women, oversaw quiet hour prayer sessions for those seeking obedience, and thought his title? Behavioral Shepherd. And yes, that's what they called him. In 2016, a 19-year-old woman filed a written complaint to Reest Path's regional coordinator. She said Drexler insisted she sit completely still for 45 minutes during sessions, only if prompted. Keep an obedience log about her thought-sized response. A form letter. No investigation. No contact. By 2017, 2 more women reported being told by Drexler they breathed too loud during prayer and needed to train stillness. An internal memo later leaked read, Drexler's methods are intense, but doctrinally sound. Avoid media risk. That same year, Drexler moved and was quietly placed at another Reest Path chapter 300 miles away. Investigators reviewing Drexler's journals noticed something chilling. Each of the women in his hard drives had one thing in common: they had all been listed in private church newsletters, prayer requests, testimonies, spiritual health support updates. In one case, a woman shared during a retreat that she had panic attacks. 2 months later, she was in a Drexler file labeled Subject 3 prone to freeze response. He wasn't stalking at random, he was recruiting from within, using a network built on trust and silence. After Drexler's arrest, Reest Path Ministries deleted all web pages, shut down social media, issued one statement: "We are heartbroken over recent events and pray for all involved." But survivors say that's not enough. 2 pastors resigned. One whistleblower released meeting notes that said, "We knew he was unorthodox, but no one wanted to interfere with his success. They let him lead because he was efficient, because he kept women quiet, because he never raised his voice." And when someone like that wears a badge of morality, it becomes hard to question them without being accused of sin. Kelsey Morgan, Subject Ren, found out she had once attended a prayer circle with Drexler in the room. She never saw his face, but he'd already seen hers in a church bulletin, already picked her. Danielle Mercer's family remembers attending a church Drexler visited. He'd spoken about the quiet virtues of obedience. No one noticed. He didn't need to hide behind a mask. The church made him invisible. A girl once wrote, "I think he stares at me too long," in a church comment box. It was never read. It was never opened. The trial is over. Mike Drexler is behind bars. The hard drives are in evidence lockers. The house on Sycamore Lane is empty, but the victims, the ones he watched, tracked, and almost erased, they're still here. And for them, this story doesn't end with the guilty verdict, because you can survive the monster, but surviving everything that comes after, that's a different kind of war. Danielle moved twice, changed her name once. She doesn't talk to press, doesn't give interviews, but her sister allowed investigators to share parts of her trauma therapy journal. "I thought if I scrubbed the apartment long enough, I'd feel clean. But it's not dirt, it's history." Danielle now sleeps on the floor, never on a bed. Her dog, Scout, is trained to wake her during nightmares. The one time she spoke publicly, it was for a survivor panel. She said, "He didn't kill me, but he cut something out of me, and no one could see it bleeding." After Drexler's sentencing, 5 more women came forward. None had physical evidence, none remembered him by name, but all had that same feeling, a window that wasn't open the night before, a door they swore they locked at a faint shift in their sleep. Like someone had moved. The Arrow woman, who went by S, said, "I felt haunted, but not by a ghost, by someone real, someone who thought I belonged to him while I was unconscious." She wasn't part of the trial, but when she saw Drexler's surveillance notes, she recognized the words, "She rolls left, never right, afraid of breath." He was describing her. Detective Marcus Hale, who found the Baysamanthe, left the force 6 months later. No exit interview, no memoir, no podcast, just silence. A retired colleague said Hale refused to enter any house with a basement after that. He reportedly told one friend, "It wasn't just what I saw, it was what I knew we missed, what he was going to do next, and how close we were to never knowing." Drexler is serving 115 years in a federal facility. He's been denied parole twice, but his victims say it's not about that. Kelsey Morgan, Subject Ren, started a trauma advocacy program for women targeted by digital predators. She called it the Ren Network. Her first public quote was, "We survived being turned into experiments, but now we're data with names. And that's power." Danielle's family sponsors a scholarship for survivors of psychological abuse in her new name. Even Emma Dorsey, the woman who never knew she was being watched, speaks at support groups now. You can't X-ray a panic attack. You can't file a police report on a dream. You can't prosecute silence. That's what Drexler knew. And that's what made him dangerous. He didn't need weapons. He had patience. He had access. He had belief that no one would look twice at someone who never raised their voice. One survivor said, "He didn't want to destroy us. He wanted to rewrite us." Like we were software he could configure. A Drexler is gone, but the rooms he touched still feel colder. The beds still feel watched, and the silence still feels loaded. Because for his survivors, justice didn't come with the gavel. It came with being believed. It came with being seen. Some monsters don't hide in closets. They hide in code. In basements. In theology. In quiet systems that reward their silence. Danielle Mercer lived, but she didn't walk away untouched, because even when you escape the basement, you take part of it with you. Subscribe, like, share, and drop a comment below.